couples need to actually have an embodied experience about what intimacy feels like, especially if they've been in a sexless marriage. They have to remember, they have to have an experience of what it's like to feel a little bit of a sexual charge.
Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, our guest is Xanet Pailet. And let me tell you a little bit about Xanet. She is the best-selling author of Living an Orgasmic Life, Heal Yourself and Awaken Your Pleasure, and the founder of Passionate Intimacy Retreats. Xanet is a former New York City healthcare lawyer who lived in a sexless marriage for over 2 decades. At age 50, after experiencing her own sexual healing and awakening in 2011, she transitioned her career into a full-time sex and intimacy educator and coach and trauma practitioner. Xanet believes that pleasure is our birthright, and she is passionate about helping individuals find their way back into their bodies, their desires, and their pleasure. Over the past decade, she has helped rescue hundreds of couples from unsatisfying sex lives and has helped women who are sexually shut down learn how to love themselves, their body, and reclaim their desire. All very important work. Thank you so much for being with us, Xanet. We're very excited to talk to you.
Thank you. I am super excited to be here and to talk to the two of you as well.
Well, I think we should just dive in.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Just dive in.
Would
you tell us about your own story of sexual awakening and transformation?
Yes, my own story around sexual awakening and transformation didn't really happen until I hit my 50s, which is pretty late in life to be, going on this journey. A little bit of background just to have some context. So I wasn't a sexless, essentially sexless. I have 2 boys, so not a wholly, right? But I had a lot of issues. I had a lot of shame trauma from some things that happened when I was super young, like 7 years old, with a pet dog and a friend, caught playing doctor. Like all of this stuff created a lot of shame and anxiety for me. And that just translated into not ever being comfortable with sex, to the point where I ended up having basically vaginismus, where, the pelvic floor muscles just contract. So sex was always uncomfortable and painful. And then there were medical issues and some medical trauma at the hands of urologists. So all of that just was like, it was just so much easier. And there was so much drama around it in my marriage that it was so much easier just to say at like 30, both kids are born like, whoa, I'm just closing my legs and I'm done,
Yeah.
And essentially that was a conscious/subconscious decision that I made. And then, not surprisingly, when the intimate relationship, which we really didn't have much of anyway, starts falling apart, the relationship also started falling apart for a variety of reasons. But we stayed together because we had kids. Neither one of us wanted to upset the apple cart, nor did we have any ability to even communicate about like, wow, things really are not working out very well for us, right? I mean, it was my son in high school. Actually, he was a sophomore, a freshman in college, and came home that summer, and he just said, Mom, like you and Dad, like you're not getting along, like you need to divorce.
Oh,
and
wow.
when your kid says that to you, like, and I knew it, like I already had a plan to do it, but there were complicating factors. So, here I was, age 50, hated sex. I'd never had an orgasm. I had no pleasure. For me, it was just trauma, but I knew I wanted to be like, I was young, right? I knew I wanted to like maybe even get married again. I just watched your episode on Marriage is a Trap.
Well, you know how we feel now.
I'm sure. I think my partner would agree with that, but that's for another conversation.
Sure.
But I knew I had all of these issues around sex and I didn't know what to do about it, right? And, as the universe does its thing, this man walked into my life just for a very short period of time, but he had just done a Tantra workshop in California. I was living in New York City, single at that point. And he was like, this was incredible for me. I had this amazing experience, and I just want, to offer you a goddess worship session. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That
But,
sounds fun.
I know. I
but
would like
maybe there's something here, right?
goddess worship session.
Goddess worship session. And that was the first time that I actually started to experience some relaxation in my body. He taught me how to breathe. He was super gentle. He kept his pants on. It was really all about like my pleasure, me being able to say yes and no, total consent. And that was like the inkling of like, oh, okay, maybe this is something that can change. Maybe this is something that we can work with. But it took a long time. It took a lot of diving into my trauma. It took a lot of me starting to get like comfortable with my body and comfortable with my sexuality. And I did a ton of training programs. So Tantra Sacred Sexuality was my doorway into healing, but it wasn't the only part of the journey. It was just the first step. And then I just took it further.
What was it in you that drew you, pulled you in that direction? Like, did you have an inkling that you wanted to experience pleasure? Or because I think a lot of people who have trauma kind of choose what you did. Close your legs, no sex, we're not doing it. What turned that around for you?
I don't know. There was like something inside of me, this like driving feeling inside of me. There's got to be more to life than what I'm having. It was all aspects, right? It wasn't just my sexual pleasure. It was like life just kind of sucked. I was in a very challenging marriage at that point. The kids had left. I was lonely. I was working, I had successful career and whatnot, but I felt so lonely inside. And I think I've always been somebody who wanted to be in partnership with somebody. I think that feels very fulfilling to me. So this is just a sense of like, all of my friends are saying sex is good and they have orgasms. And actually, I think at that point I had bought myself a vibrator, maybe at like 48, and I hid it in the closet so the housekeeper couldn't find it.
Smart.
So I think maybe like at that point I was like, okay, yes, I can see that I can actually experience something like an orgasm, but can I even do this with another person? Right. Because for me, intercourse, any type of penetration, oral sex was just horrendous. And here's the truth, Jennifer, like if I really think back in my history, I was a really sexual child. Like my shame trauma happened from being caught playing doctor in first grade with my friend. Right. I was very sexually curious. So I think
most kids aren't they?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's very natural for kids to be sexually curious because we don't have all the shame associated with it. In college, I was like, what did they call it? I like counseled, college students on sexuality. So I was always interested in it, I think. I worked in an abortion clinic for a while, right? Like I was always interested in sex and wellness. It just didn't really relate to me.
So it was the shame that kind of shut that down for you.
The shame and the disconnection, the medical trauma also really affects women, whether it's from childbirth or from the hands of a urologist.
Right.
Like it's bad.
You were in a relationship at the time, you were in a marriage, assuming, at some point it was a loving marriage and there was some level of trust, I'm assuming at some point in the relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Was that something that you and your husband were able to talk about at any point, and maybe just the conversations didn't go well? Or was it just one of those things where it's just like, I don't even have the terminology to talk about this. Or it's just not even something that I think talking about it will help?
Well, we were not good at talking about hard things, emotional things, right?
A lot of people aren't good at that.
Right. We didn't have that safety. We didn't really have that emotional connection. It wasn't a two-way street. I think I was very much like taking care of his emotional needs, but I mean, we just didn't really have that. When we did try to talk about it, it was just so many tears and so much drama that it was just like, it's just not worth it. It is literally not worth it. We started like sleeping in separate beds and then in separate rooms. And like all of that happened over, a 15-year period of time, more than that. 20. Yeah, it was a long period of time, 20-year period of time.
That's so interesting to me, the separate beds in separate rooms.
Yeah.
I want to talk about emotions and trauma that women can hold in their womb space and pelvic bowl.
Yeah. Great question. Our womb space and our pelvic floor is really where we hold most of our trauma,
Mhm.
generally speaking, especially having anything having to do with abuse and sex. And, in general, like our body takes on all of the experiences that we've had, all of our joy, all of our sadness, all of our anger, all of our fear. We hold it in our body. And when trauma happens, regardless of what type of trauma happens, if you experience, it gets trapped somewhere in your body. For a lot of
Mhm.
women, it gets trapped in their pelvic area. So, like when I work with women and we're doing like a body scan, like noticing where are you feeling sensation in your body as you breathe, or even if you imagine or draw parts of your body that feel, oh, this is a place I can really accept, and this is a place I don't. There's often a lot of blockages in the pelvic area, which in the tantra world would be called the second chakra,
Mhm.
in the pelvic space, right? Because that is our center. I believe very strongly, like our womb is our center of creativity and power, but it's also the place where we hold a lot of our trauma and the trapped energy. And that's a very, very common experience. And so that is where women get shut down, right? Where they literally numb out and have no sensation on their genitals. Very common for women who have experienced trauma and abuse.
So what do you do when you're working with a woman and you find that to be the case? Are you doing a process where you're releasing some of that
Mhm.
trauma and opening that chakra up, or
I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner. I'm a trauma practitioner. And in that world of Peter Levine's world, where we look at trauma being really trapped in the body, what we're looking at is a very gradual release of the places where that body is, that where that trauma is trapped. So if you think about, I don't know if you've ever seen this, an animal that gets, cornered, right? Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you just did it,
Yeah.
right? It gets
Yeah.
cornered, right? And goes into like a freeze
Yeah.
state, right? When it escapes from that freeze, it shakes out. It shakes out all of
Right.
the energy, all of that trapped energy, right? And in somatic experiencing, we help our clients do that very gradually in a titrated way, start to release a little bit of that energy. And that might feel like heat coming through, or it might feel like a little shaking, or it might feel like a lot of belching or burping, right? All of that is the release of trapped energy. So that's more the way that I work with it. I also do a I do some meditations with women around their body and around their pelvic area and their genitals. I call it a yoni meditation. So have you heard that word before? Yoni?
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So just for your listeners, yoni is the Sanskrit word for a woman's vulva, basically, and womb space. And so really taking them through a little bit of a process of just imagining that some of that energy is releasing and having some forgiveness. There's so much we hold, anger, self-judgment, like all of that, when we've experienced trauma, any type of trauma, whether it's sexual trauma, physical abuse, visual abuse, right, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, all of it like gets stored inside of us. It's a process, it takes some time. The unwinding process needs to go rather slowly so that the nervous system can learn how to regulate itself.
Sure.
Can there be something held in the body, even if it's not specific trauma, like if it's just maybe societal conditioning? Like I'm thinking of, say if there are women listening who are like, I wasn't abused, I wasn't traumatized as a child, I haven't had any specific situation
Yeah,
that immediately comes to mind. I've just been conditioned as a woman in patriarchy to not
yeah,
like sex, to not
yes,
initiate sex, to not find joy in my body, to definitely not find joy in sex or my own sexual life or sexual being. So
Yeah.
what about women who are in that situation?
I think that's every woman, right?
Yeah.
You know, we all have what I call a sexual blueprint, and those are
Mhm.
the messages that we received around sex and around intimacy as a child and as we started to mature into adulthood. And
Mhm.
those are the messages that we bring in to our relationships, right? And so that is a huge issue for women. There all of the messages, especially if you grew up in any type of religious background, right? There's so much shaming for women
Yeah.
around sex if you enjoyed sex and you weren't a virgin, and you know all of the ways in which women are conditioned, and ways in which women are conditioned not to be able to ask for what they want, ways in which
Mhm.
women are conditioned to feel like it's their obligation
Yeah.
to please their male partner, and that they don't actually get to have pleasure. You know, I could go on, but yes, absolutely, every single woman, we all deal with that. And those are, you know, a lot of those, I like to say, those are false beliefs, but they're not, they don't have to be our beliefs. They were beliefs that were forced upon us, if you will, by the
Mhm.
church, by society, by our cultural upbringing, by our parents, right? We
Yeah.
can release those beliefs and rewrite those stories. Absolutely.
On your, I think it was on your website, maybe it was on your Instagram, but you said we have a lot of false beliefs, like our vagina is broken.
Mm.
Explain that one.
I wrote a blog post about this. I think this, I think what I meant by that is a lot of women do feel like their vagina is broken, right?
Sure.
Because they're not feeling horny anymore. They're not, especially as you know we age and go into midlife, like our hormones drop. We don't feel desire anymore. Many women don't experience satisfaction through intercourse, right? When I say our vagina is broken, I think that's women's thoughts,
Yeah.
right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't think our vagina is broken. I think our vaginas are perfect, right? And yeah, sometimes they need help, right? And there are people who can help with that. But there's a way in which, when there's a problem, women tend to blame it on themselves,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yep.
Like, oh, this
Yep.
is my fault. There's something wrong. How many women come
Yep.
in and tell me this is my fault? There's something wrong with me. This is
Yep.
Yeah.
something that I did. I can't orgasm during sex. And I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
well, you can't orgasm during sex. It's not your problem, right? Like, so I think that's like another, like a belief that we have, a way in which we've been conditioned to like make it our fault when it takes
Yeah.
two to tango, always. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
also, I think you said a women of a certain age, I think with the whole perimenopause and menopause symptoms, not symptoms, all the stuff that's
Mhm.
going on, maybe we've been told or taught, or we think that
Mhm.
that should decrease our libido.
Yes, I mean, that's a huge myth, Jennifer, right? Like, I think that's one of the things I like to say is, you know, for a lot of women, the majority of whom are having really bad sex or not having sex, right? Because the number of couples in sexless marriages is very, very high and extraordinarily underreported.
Mm.
You know, menopause becomes the excuse,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I can't do it anymore. I'm dried up. You know, it doesn't feel good. I'm not horny anymore. You know, just watch your porn, take care of yourself. I'm good.
Right. Right.
You know, and then you see these same women who, like, oh, I don't know, maybe they end up in a new relationship. And all of a sudden they're like fucking like rabbits, right? Like it's
Yeah.
right. And I'm like, what, you're in menopause? Yeah, I know. But all of a sudden my libido came back. I'm like, right. Wasn't menopause.
Yeah.
Not
It wasn't broken.
It wasn't broken, right? And that's not to say there aren't real things that happen. Yes, our estrogen drops, right? Yes, our testosterone levels drop. Like all of that does affect us. Yes, there's less lubrication, but you know, especially now, there are ways to deal with it, right? There's
Mhm.
a lot of different ways to deal with hormonal changes, and I think the medical community is getting more open to helping women, you know, be on HRT at much
Yeah,
earlier ages.
that's true.
And that's actually really important as well. So, but most of the time it's just they're having bad sex.
Mhm. And life is too short for bad sex.
It's too short for bad sex.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
If women are having bad sex, then my thought is, who exactly needs to be educated here?
Both.
Ex-
Everybody needs to be educated, right?
exactly.
Everybody needs to be educated because I find this to be true for women. You can tell me whether or not this is true for in your experience, but I think women tend to, let me say, get bored kind of easily in general. And I know a lot of men, they could just do the same thing over and over again with sex and they're fine. Like they don't need anything else.
Mhm.
But what I hear from a lot of women is like, it's just boring. Like we just do
Yeah.
the same thing over and over again. Right.
Right.
And so everybody needs to be educated that, first of all, we do not define sex correctly.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And there's way more to it than just penetration, people.
Exactly. Right. But there's so much pressure for penetration that as what sex is, that it just really takes away all of the other like big smorgasbord that we have of other types of sexual activities that we can engage in.
I feel like I don't know if I get bored easily, but I feel like there's often a lot of pressure around the orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, if that becomes the point, at a certain point, I'm just like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. I feel like a science experiment. Oh, if I push this button, let's see what it'll do. And that doesn't seem intimate to me. That seems more like I'm trying to get to this goal.
Right.
Well, but to your point, Jennifer, I think, and this goes to the lack of education and lack of talking about it, is that there is more to sex than just the penetration. There's the intimacy part, I think, gets taken out of the equation when people talk about sex and sexual relationships. I mean, there's everything leading up to it that people don't talk about. There's more to foreplay than just kissing me and making out and making sure that I'm wet. Like there's more to it than that. And that doesn't get talked about. And I think it's like I just said, the intimacy part gets taken out of the equation. Like Xanet, on your Instagram, you talk about 3 stages of intimacy.
2 stages of sexual relationships. Yeah.
Right. Friction, validation, and connection. And validation and connection just kind of get tossed out the window. It's all about, hey, we're, all of a sudden we're like real horny and hot for each other. And oh, guess what? Boom, done. There's before, there's during, and then there's also after. But we don't talk about before and after very much.
What are these 3 stages? I missed that somewhere.
Yeah. So there's basically 3 stages of sex. There's the friction sex, which is really new relationship energy. That's what it is, right? It's in the beginning of a relationship. Everybody wants to like screw like rabbits.
Yeah.
And that's mother, right? And that's mother.
Yeah.
It's real fun. And that's Mother Nature doing her thing towards procreation, right? Very, very smart.
Yeah.
Our bodies have that way in which all of this dopamine is released. Validation sex is generally the place where couples in long-term relationships get stuck. It's actually not in friction sex, it's in validation sex, right? In validation sex, we're having sex with our partner to be able to continue to be validated. I'm important. You love me. I love you. It's how service sex shows up. Obligation sex shows up in validation sex. I need to perform for you in order to keep you happy so you won't leave this marriage or relationship.
That sounds terrible.
Right? It happens so often though.
Is it also when a man, because I've experienced this before, and I don't know if you'd call it validation sex, but is it when a man needs to have sex to have his like emotional intimacy validated?
Sometimes that's one of the complicated pieces around it. Let me just talk about connection sex. So connection sex is that 3rd level of sex that Raquel is sort of referencing, right? That place of like where deep intimacy actually happens, where we slow down, where we really focus on each other's pleasure. We don't worry about the destination. We really focus on the journey and experiencing that together. The question that you asked about, like, so that's one of these really complicated differences between women and men in general, is that women tend to need emotional connection and intimacy before they want to be sexual with their partner.
Yep.
And for a lot of men, they actually find that emotional intimacy through sex.
Yes.
Right. So a
I've
lot
noticed.
of you've
Mhm.
noticed, right? Like once they have
Mhm.
sex, then they're ready to open up and be intimate. And that's one of those places where like, we just like butt heads, like our arousal pathways are so different. And that in the stage of connection sex, we can start to address that by recognizing that we all need emotional intimacy and connection. And, honestly, what I say to a lot of couples, because that's primarily who I do a lot of my work with, is like, I know that you feel more connected with her when you guys have sex. I totally get that, right? That's how you're wired. But she's not going to give you sex if she doesn't feel emotionally connected to you. Women actually hold the keys to the palace here. When I start to give them the experience of what deep emotional intimacy and connection feels like outside of a sexual relationship, the men are also like, oh, this is really good. Like, I want to be seen. I want to be
Mhm.
heard, because just like so many women feel like they're not seen and not heard in the relationship, the guys feel like they're not seen and heard in the relationship also.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Are more couples therapists and marriage therapists or whatever, are more people talking about this, of like talk to each other, like, build intimacy in more than just penetration?
I hope so. There's certainly been more sex coaches that have been educated in the last 10 years for sure. So
Mhm.
it's more out there. You see it, all over Instagram. So I hope that there are more people talking about it. In my personal experience with the clients that I haven't felt really very good about what's going on in counseling and therapy. I feel like my logo and my website, and it's true, is like, you can't talk your way into better sex. You actually have to feel your way into better sex. And so you go to a lot of times you go to a therapist to talk about your sex life. First of all, they're not comfortable talking about it, generally
Oh.
speaking.
Mhm.
And, all they want to do is talk about it and have you like go home and read books and practice. That's not going to work. Yeah, couples need to actually have an embodied experience about what intimacy feels like, especially if they've been in a sexless marriage. They have to remember, they have to have an experience of what it's like to feel a little bit of a sexual charge. And most therapists just aren't comfortable doing that. So that's one of the ways in which my work is so different and I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. That's one of the ways in which my work is so different, that I actually work with people in an experiential, interactive way. So they start to feel their way
Mhm.
into connection. I think that's part of the issue.
So
Okay.
you have retreats for couples. Is it one couple at a time or is it a group of couples?
Primarily, I do both, but I only do a group retreat once a year, usually in Costa Rica. And that's typically for couples who are not in a sexless marriage. So they're having sex and they're a pretty like stable, they're in a stable relationship, because you don't want to bring a couple in a sexless marriage who's, really fighting with each other to a
Yeah,
group retreat. Like there's enough
Yeah.
drama that happens in a group retreat.
that could get messy. Yeah.
Get very
Yeah, a
messy
little
very
bit.
fast.
So when a couple comes to you and it's a one-on-one, a couple and
Yes.
you,
Yeah.
how does that retreat go down? What do they experience?
Um, they experience a bunch of different things. Of course, every retreat is tailored to whatever issues are going on in their relationship. But like first and foremost, they experience normalizing being able to talk about sex, which a lot of couples cannot talk
I feel
about
like they
sex.
need more than a weekend for that.
Yeah.
Right. They experience like, I always start off with, we've got to establish and deepen the emotional connection. Like that is the first place to start.
Yeah.
What does it feel like to attune to your partner? And what does that even mean? Because so many couples are misattuned to each other, which is
Mhm.
why there's, discrepancy desires and they're not in the rhythm. And there's all this, I want to go fast and he wants to go slow, whatever it is, right? Like,
Mhm.
so they experience like, what does it actually feel like in your body to have this deeper emotional connection with your partner? If, as is often the case, there's resentment that's been built up, there's conflicts that have not been repaired, they experience the process of dealing with that. out in the open, you know, no
Mm.
holds barred. I teach a repair process that's very powerful. And I work with couples in picking up, like, whether it's an affair or, you know, very, very deep resentments, like we just go right into it. So they experience a lot of healing on that level. And then they start to, once we've gotten through that, they start to experience and experiment, like talking about touch and how do we touch each other and practicing. And I teach different types of touch. And then we look at, like, there's all these different, we call it sexual styles or erotic blueprints. And then we explore, what's your sexual style? What do you enjoy? Let's try this. Let's try energetic. Let's try more sensual, understanding what that means, how to integrate it in their coupledom, in their lovemaking. Right. So they begin to experience generally more of the physical component. They have a lot of free time to play. They stay in this beautiful Airbnb, very sexy, with a hot tub and a private deck and a swing and a sex
Sounds
chair.
fun.
I
Sounds
know,
fun.
it's fun. So they have time to integrate and do some processing on their own. And I give them home play as well. And then, since many of the couples who come to me are kind of like at the end of their rope, right? Like, this either is going to work or we're going to leave. You know, that's a common thing. And, you know, I have a 90% success rate in getting them not to leave. Very often we might work afterwards together as well. Like, I'll continue working with them for 6 months or whatever they need to be able to keep them on track and help them continue to deepen. So that's what you would experience
Oh, yeah.
in a couple.
Very interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have 2 things that I want to ask about. Well, more than 2 things, but 2 things right now.
Okay.
And I'm only saying both of them now because I don't want to forget. One, can you talk more about erotic blueprint? Because you've brought that up a couple of times. So I want our listeners to know specifically what you're talking about.
Okay. Yes.
And then another thing that popped into my head when you were talking about the retreat and working with the couples, one thing that comes up is, and I, just being fully transparent, I've dealt with this in relationships before where, you know, my partner wanted to have sex, and it's not that I wasn't attracted to him anymore. It was just at that moment I didn't want to, for whatever reason. Like, I just wasn't feeling sexy, or I had a headache, or I was completely stressed out and had other stuff on my mind, or whatever, like anything. But and I would try to say, you know, nicely, like, oh, you know, I'm not right now, or, you know, how about later, or what, you know, whatever. And I'm sure lots of other people have experienced this as well. But you see the look on the person's face, like, oh, you don't love me, you don't like me, you're, you know, you're shutting me down, blah, 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 you're being hurtful or whatever. And either the person just goes away and they're unhappy and whatever, or you end up having sex when you don't want to.
Okay.
So take, you know, whatever order you want of those 2 questions, but like, what do you do to
All
go,
right.
you know
I'm
what,
going to start with the second question because I remember it.
okay.
That's what it's at. So a very common experience that, you know, that everybody has. And, you know, there's a couple of things to think about here. Sometimes you really are stressed and it's not a good time. Sometimes you're really not feeling well and you have a headache. And right. And that's all makes total sense. Right. And hopefully, you know, and I'll talk about how to deal with that. But I want to just mention one other thing, because as women age, our desire and our arousal pathway changes from spontaneous desire, which we had when we were very young and our hormones were raging, like, we're really horny, I want to have sex now, or in new relationship energy, same thing, right? To what we call responsive desire. And
I'm glad you're talking about this.
Yeah, responsive desire happens when your partner or you start touching yourself. And then your body starts responding and saying, oh, yeah, like, that feels really good. I really am enjoying that. And your arousal starts that way. And the more of that touch you get, which is why as we get older, foreplay is more and more important because it takes us longer to get aroused. The more of that touch you get, and maybe you get kissed the way you want to get kissed, and your body has that feeling of, yeah, I forgot, I really like this. And then you start getting aroused and you may be able to go into some sort of sexual experience, right? So I think, and again, that's a lot of the reason women feel broken, right? Like, oh, I just don't feel horny anymore. Yeah, your estrogen levels have dropped, like it's your testosterone levels have dropped. Like, of course you don't feel horny anymore, but there's nothing broken about us, and that's normal. And, we have to just remember that, right? And sometimes for me, that means I haven't had sex in a while. I know that once we start, it's going to feel good. So even though I'm not horny, I'm going to say, hey, baby, let's have a sexy date because I know it's going to feel good, right? And I feel like as women, we also have to take some of that responsibility, because if your desire is only responsive, then it's up to your partner all the time to have to initiate sex because sex is low on your agenda, right? So I always like to tell my ladies that it's like, let's not forget, like, because that becomes a problem too. So the second piece of what you're asking when your partner feels rejected, right? And, especially if you're in a hetero relationship, we know men's egos are very, very fragile. They're just little boys, right? And they get rejected. They feel rejected very easily. This is part of what I teach is like, oh, oh, honey, you're feeling rejected, right?
Poor
like
baby.
And just, acknowledging, validating their feelings like, oh, I can see you're really disappointed. You really wanted connection with me. And maybe, can I offer something else? Like, how about if we just like get in bed and cuddle, right? Like we can always offer something potentially if we're not feeling well,
This
right?
sounds like the steps to good guest service.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
Yep. Acknowledge, apologize, offer to make it right.
Yeah. Like good customer service. There you go.
Customer service. Okay.
Yep. We're
So,
servicing our man.
We're servicing, right? But also just like, I think one of the things couples don't understand, and this is why they get in fights all the time or they shut down, right? Because usually what happens is your partner will just shut down, right? And now you're maybe in a conflict and they're feeling kind of bad and you're feeling bad as well. And everybody's like feeling bad, but nobody talks about it. And we just go on, right? So, I think it's important for couples to understand that at least 20% of relationship is about disappointment, right? And how you handle that disappointment together, how you process that disappointment makes a huge difference about whether or not you're going to have a healthy relationship. And that's what that would be, processing the disappointment. Like, yeah, I can see you're really disappointed. You really wanted connection with me. I think they just want to feel validated. Like, I get it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So where does erotic blueprint come in?
Oh, erotic blueprints. Okay. So first, let me say, this is not my thing. This comes from Jaya, Miss Jaya. She came up with the concept. She came up with the nomenclature for it. All of the sex world coaches know that there's different sexual styles, right? But she came up with a quiz and the nomenclature for what she calls the erotic blueprints. And they're basically really 5 different sexual styles that you might have, and you might have a little bit of all of them. So the first one is sexual, which is really like the traditional, like, really into genitals, really into orgasm, really into like what we talk about when we talk about like normal sex, how people talk about it. And then there's the sensual blueprint. And a lot of women tend to be more sensual, and, people who are sensual can really take in all 5 senses. They like a lot of touch. They tend to like more gentle touch in the beginning. They also have, things that makes it hard. The way she positions this is there are superpowers for each of these styles. And then there's the shadow side of each of the style, right?
Got it.
That makes sense.
Right. The shadow for the sensual, The shadow for the sexual is they ignore all the other types of sex.
Right.
The shadow for the sensual is they get distracted really easily. Anything that's a little bit off takes them out of their experience, out of their body, into
Got
their
it.
head, and then like they can't focus on sex anymore, right? Which is a
Got
big
it.
problem for a lot of women and men. It's like we're
Mhm.
up here in our head and we're not in our body actually enjoying sex. There's the energetic, and the energetic is more, if you think about Tantra and sacred sexuality, that's more like we're all made of energy, everything's energy. And so these people like to connect more on an energetic level. They like to build up the erotic energy. They like to be touched, but not actually touched on their skin, like just in their energetic field. So
Mhm.
more breath and sound and movement. That's more the energetic blueprint. And for them, that's their superpower. And it's pretty amazing because if you're energetic, you can have energetic orgasms, both women and men. Men can have non-ejaculatory orgasms. Women can have energetic orgasms where you're not actually ejaculating, but you're having all of these releases in your body. So it's very, very powerful.
Mhm.
And then there is kinky, right?
Mhm.
And we know what that is, right? You know, maybe bondage, like BDSM, maybe fetishes, like anything that's not what we consider, I guess, normal sex. And I don't think there's
Right.
such a thing as normal sex. And then there's the type that's a shapeshifter. And a shapeshifter loves it all.
Got it.
That's their superpower. And their shadow side is that often they don't get their needs met because they're like a people pleaser. Like, oh, you want to go kinky? I'll go kinky. Oh, you want to go, energetic? I'll go energetic. So
Got
those are
it.
the different blueprints. And it's what I really love about it is it gives people like something to like wrap their heads around when they look at their sexual style and their partner's sexual style, and they're like, oh, now it makes sense to me why, you're always going for my pussy. And I just want to like, I want to be touched, right? And so it gives them something to wrap their heads around. And it's also a little bit misleading because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Right. You don't know what you don't know. So like people take this quiz and it's a good quiz, but then they come to my office and they're like, well, I'm not really kinky. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's try this. And
Maybe they just haven't tried the right thing yet.
And now they're kinky.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, it does give you a good sense. And then you get a sense as you get a good sense with some coaching as how do these two styles interact with each other? And they all interact with each other.
Yeah, that's
that makes
cool.
sense.
In a way. So
yeah.
Was there anything that you wanted to tell our audience that we didn't give you the opportunity to?
Oh my goodness, so much.
I know, and the time goes by so fast. There's so much we could talk about.
Anything that I want to talk about that I haven't talked about. I feel we've covered a lot of good information. I want people to know that as you said in my bio, like I do believe pleasure is our birthright. And if you're not experiencing pleasure, you need to do something about it. There's help out there. There's books out there. There are coaches out there. I mean, there's, there is help out there, and we should be enjoying it because it's important for our health. It's important for our mental health. It's important for our relationships. And if you're not in a relationship, you'd be having sex with yourself. Like I really want women to know that, right? Like we can take care of ourselves very, very, very well, right? And
sometimes better than a man can.
Very often, right? And so, loving up ourselves and our bodies is also really, really important. Yeah. Can I tell them what I have a little gift? Can I tell them
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I have a little gift for all of you. If you go to this website, howtoimprovemylovelife.com, howtoimprovemylovelife.com. I have a little video class. It's 20 minutes to better sex. It's basically 7 3-minute short videos that have very, very specific tips about touch, about the difference between women's and men's arousal, the importance of slowing down. That's a big thing I want everybody to know. Slow the F down.
Yep.
breathing. I don't remember what else is, but yeah, so very, very specific. And then, you can connect with me through that and, learn about everything that I do and my retreats and my women's retreat. I'm doing one on power,
Awesome.
pleasure, and prosperity, which I'm very excited about.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
I will put links to all of this in the show
Yeah.
notes, people. So
Awesome. So that's
yeah.
what I want that's what I want your audience to know.
Okay, I just have one quick question before we wrap up really quick,
Mhm.
because we always talk about, or at least everything that I hear when we're talking about sex and how that changes as we get older, it's always about how women's bodies change
Oh,
as we
yeah.
get older. What about men's bodies? What about
Yeah.
how intimacy changes for them as they get older? Because, they probably can't or shouldn't take Viagra up until they're like 113 years old. Like, things have got to change for them too. So
That's such a great question, Raquel. Yes, of course, men's bodies are changing as well. There's this thing called male menopause. It happens to them as well, right? Their
mhm,
testosterone levels drop, and yeah, so more and more men as they age
mhm,
have more and more problems with maintaining erections. Sometimes getting erections. I think that's why you see very often older couples. I'm 65.
mhm.
I don't consider myself an older couple, but couples in their 80s, and I know have worked with them, some have come on my retreats, tend to focus less on penetration. It's
Yeah.
just not as big a deal. Or, if they really want to focus on penetration, then they're using a dildo or, something else. But there's less of a focus on it for men as well.
Mhm.
And I think that allows everybody to slow down. And, I think women sometimes come in and really shame their partners, right? Like,
That's
because
too bad.
it's really
Mhm.
hard. And some of these are like kind of young guys, right? But they have so much pressure to
Mhm.
perform and to be hard all the time and to fuck them really hard, right?
Yeah.
And they're just like freaking out, right?
Yeah.
Because of all of the pressure that they have as well. So I feel like we need to be very compassionate to
Yeah.
each other and recognize that bodies change over
Yep.
time, but that doesn't mean that you can't have amazing sex.
That's exactly what I was hoping that you would say, because I think people expect that after a certain age, you don't care about sex, you don't have sex, there's no intimacy, there's no, like, I don't know, longing in your body for your partner after a certain age, that it's just not possible. But it is possible. It is possible to still have intimacy and enjoy a physical relationship with your partner, even as an elderly person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's important for health and longevity too.
Yep, there's hope for us people. Just because you get to a certain age doesn't mean that there's no intimacy, there's no physicality after a certain age. There is.
There is. There's no end to the amount of pleasure that you could have to your deathbed.
Nice.
It's true.
Okay, that's the major takeaway for me from this.
Yeah. What a great discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks so
I
much
hope
for having me.
I hope
It
a
was
lot of
so
couples
fun.
reach out to you.
Yeah, I hope
Yes.
so. I'd love that.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we know your major takeaway, but do you wanna recap around that or around something else?
Yeah, I think society, surprise, has done us all a disservice
Sure.
in that sex is only put forth as penetration and that's it,
Yeah.
right? It's put forth to us as there's an end goal and that's it, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much more to sex and intimacy and pleasure than just getting your rocks off.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
I didn't really know how to approach this episode because we have had episodes about pleasure before.
Mhm.
And at that time I was dating and I was really into the idea. And this time I'm not dating. And To be quite honest, I've been kind of like, I guess not turned on, turned off. I've been turned off lately. And so I was a lot of her information on her website and her Instagram was talking about age related things. And I was looking at that closely and like, maybe I'm just getting too old for this. Today's discussion was interesting. I think it's important. I also think right now I'm just at a different phase in my life of what I'm interested in right now. So, but I hope it comes back because it's an enjoyable part of life.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's important that you're saying that you're just at a different phase in your life right now. Yeah. And that makes sense. I mean, we all go through different phases in our lives. And I think kind of based on what Xanet talks about is, I think it's easier to be in that phase when you're single and you're not part of a couple. But if you're part of a couple and you're in that phase, then you can talk about it.
Yeah.
You can find other ways to navigate that phase.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what's important is that there's intimacy in other ways.
Yeah. And you know how on a couple episodes ago, I talked about that episode of Brady Bunch, Jan's Aunt Jenny.
Yeah.
So today I started thinking about this on the episode. I started thinking about this. Oh yeah. Jan's Aunt Jenny wasn't married, but she had a lot of lovers.
There you go.
I mean, I didn't say that on the Brady Bunch, but
you kind of read into it.
In some ways they implied it. They had someone call her and ask her to marry, and she's like, no, I can't be tied down.
I can't be tied down.
I think we can reimagine a lot of things inside and outside of marriage. And maybe for me, it'll be more of, I'm going adventuring. Maybe eventually I'll invite sex back into that adventure. For now, not so much, but who knows what tomorrow will bring.
Yeah, exactly. You're not saying never. You're just saying, not right now. Just not right now. I think it's important that we have the broader conversation, and society doesn't present that. I mean, and society barely presents people over a certain age even being romantic, let alone sexual and sensual. I mean, we don't see that at least not in mainstream entertainment and
That's right.
whatnot.
That's right. Yeah. But we know they're having sex.
Let's hope they are, because that means there's hope for me.
It was a great episode. I had about 10 more questions I could have asked, but
same.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It does.
Bye, Raquel.
Bye, Jennifer. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend.
Or you could leave us a comment and a 5-star review, or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks, everybody.